In my practice, I taught my patients that boundaries are the architecture of a healthy mind. They are the walls that protect the sacred rooms of the self from the chaos of the outside world. I built my career, my reputation, and my entire life on this principle. I never imagined my own son would be the one to prove that my foundation was built on sand. My house was a testament to my philosophy, a minimalist structure of glass, steel, and polished concrete. It stood on a manicured cliff city. The city, every piece of furniture was chosen for its clean lines, every surface kept immaculate clair. It was a space of order, logic, and control. It was my fortress. After a messy, emotionally volatile divorce from a man who lived his life a long chaotic improvisation, I had craved order. My ex-husband, a painter felt everything and analyzed nothing, used to call me the Ice Queen. I took it as a compliment. Ice is structured, ice is strong. Into this carefully curated world came Julian Myson. He was 19, home for the summer, his first year of university, and was his father's child in every way that mattered. He was sensitive, emotionally transparent, and possessed a creative, restless soul that was fundamentally at odds with the sterile environment I had built. He brought with him not just his oversized duffel bags, but an energy that felt disruptive, a warmth that threatened to melt the very foundations of my icy kingdom. The first week was deceptively calm. He slept late, went for long runs, and spent in his room with his charcoal sketches. We coexisted peacefully, orbiting each other in the silent, sunlit spaces of the house. I observed him from a clinical distance the way I would a new patient. I noted his moods, his habits, the subtle shifts in his expression. I told myself I was just being a mother. But the truth is, I'm not sure I ever stopped being a psychiatrist. The shift began on evening in the kitchen. I was preparing a salmon salad, arranging the microgreens with surgical precision. Julian leaned against the white quartz island watching me, a thoughtful, almost pitying look on his face. "Yaup, no," he said, his voice casual. "I'm taking a Psych 101 class. We're learning about defense mechanisms." I didn't look up from my task. "Is that so? And what have you learned, Dr. Freud?" He ignored me condescending tone. "We learned about intellectualization. It's when someone avoids confronting their emotions by focusing on the abstract rational aspects of a situation." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "Does that sound familiar?" I placed a fennel caper on the salad, and looked at them, my expression carefully neutral. "Are you attempting to analyze me, Julian?" "I'm attempting to talk to you," he countered, his voice gentle but firm. As a son, not as a case study. A flicker of irritation went through me. "I'm not you. I'm making dinner." "No," Hesed, shaking his head slowly. "You're reconstructing it. Everything you do is this house a conversations. Even the way you fold the napkins, it's all a performance af control." His words were so astoundingly pursty, so close to the bone that they left me momentarily speechless. He was using the language of my own profession as a weapon against me. It was both infuriating and on a level I refused to acknowledge deeply impressive. "I value order," I said, my voice cold. "Unlike your father, I don't see any virtue in chaos." The mention of his father hung in the air between us. It was a sore subject, a wound we rarely touched. Julian's expression softened. "Dad was mossy, I'll give you that, but at least was real. He felt things. He wasn't afraid to be vulnerable." "His vulnerability is what led to the collapse of our marriage?" I retorted sharply. "No," Julian said, his gaze unwavering. "Your fear of it is what did." I had no response. He had stripped away my defenses with the ease of a master, leaving me exposed and raw. I felt a sudden desperate need to reassert my authority, to put him back in his places, the child, and me back in mine as Thettled, the expert. "I think you're a very complex dynamic," I said, my professional voice clicking into place. "Your developmental stage often leads to a revaluation and challenging of parental authority figures. It's a perfectly normal part of individuation." He actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. "There you go, Gin. You're doing it right now. You're putting me in a textbook so you don't have to put me in your heart." He pushed off the counter and left the room, leaving me alone in my perfect silent kitchen. His words echoed in the stillness, chipping away at the icy walls I had so carefully constructed around myself. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a crack in my own foundation. In the days that followed, our dynamic shifted. Julian began a gentle, relentless campaign to breach my defenses. He would find me in my study where I was reviewing patient files, and instead of leaving me to my work, he would sit down and start talking. He told me about his art, about the passion he felt when he was sketching the way the world seemed to fade away until it was just him and the charcoal on the page. He was describing a state of flow of uninhibited creation that was utterly foreign to my controlodextence. He talked about his fears, his insecurities. He'd had his heart broken by a girl in his art class, and he described the pain with a raw poetic honesty that was both beautiful and terrifying to me. I found myself listening not as a clinician looking for patterns, but as something softer. My training screamed at me to create distance, to establish professional boundaries. Who was exhibiting signs of emotional transference, looking to me to fill the void left by his romantic disappointment. I should have explained this to him gently and rationally. But I didn't single quotes instead. I listened. I found myself asking questions, not to diagnose but to understand. And in doing so, I was stepping into the very emotional arena I had spent my entire adult life avoiding. One afternoon, he found me by the infinity pool, staring out at the city's. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice startling me from my reverie. "Systemic family therapy models," I replied automatically. He sighed and sat down in the lounge chair next to me. "No, you weren't. What were you really thinking about?" I looked at him at his earnest open face, and for some reason, I told him the truth. I was thinking about how small the city looks from up here. All those millions of people, all their messy, complicated lives reduced to a neat, silent grid. He smiled. A genuine radiant smile. "See, that wasn't so hard, was it? A real thought, a real feeling." He paused, his expression turning more serious. "You know, Dad was a fool to let Sumianeso, brilliant and beautiful, go." The compliment landed like a stone in the placid pool of my composure. It wasn't the way a son compliments a mother. He hadn't called me a good mom, or smart or successful. He had called me brilliant and beautiful. He had called me a woman. A strange, unfamiliar warmth spread through my chest. A feeling so alien, I couldn't immediately identify it. It was a flutter of validation that had nothing to do with my professional activism. He didn't let me go. "Julian," I said, my voice a little unsteady. "I left him." "I know," he said softly. "But maybe you were leaving Neckhouse, not the man." His insight was ways unnervingly accurate. I had fled me husband's emotional storms, but in doing so, I had also fled the warmth of his son. I had chosen a life a perpetual, predictable twilight. That true turning point, the moment that cracks in my foundation widened into a catastrophic fissure, happened a week. It was late, well after midnight. I couldn't sleep and had come downstairs for a glass of water. I found him in the living room, the cavernous space lit only by the blue-white glow of his laptop. He was surrounded by crumpled up pieces of paper, his face a mask of frustration. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. In the quiet of the night, he looked up high-sized, tired, and red-rimmed. "It's this dumb essay from my psychology class. The nature of emotional intimacy. It's a joke. How am I supposed to write about something I've never really had?" His words were a direct hit, a thinly veiled accusation. He was talking about the girl who had broken his heart. But he was also talking about me. I sat down on the sofa opposite him. Intimacy can be a difficult concept to articulate. I began my therapist's voice. "Emerging the instinct, don't," he said, cutting me off, his voice sharp with frustration. "Please, just for once, don't be my mother." The plea hung in the air, a raw and desperate. He wanted me to shed the professional skin I had worn for so long, the armor that had kept me safe. He was asking me to be vulnerable. The very thing I counseled all others to do but had never managed myself. "All right, Julian," I said, my voice barely. What do you want to know?" "I want to know if you were ever happy with him," Hesed, his gaze intense. "With Dad, was there ever a time when you weren't analyzing everything when you just felt?" I thought back to the early days of my marriage, before the weight of our differences had crushed us. I remember the passion, the laughter, the feeling of being truly deeply seen by another person. It was a memory I had buried under years of resentment and rationalization. Yes, I admitted the confession, feeling like a betrayal of my own carefully constructed narrative. There was before, let my fear get the better of me. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "I feel like I'm becoming you," he said, his voice quiet and full of a pain that at me. "I'm so afraid of getting hurt again that I'm starting to build walls. I'm starting to think instead, I feel." He looked so lost, so young, a mirror image of my own deep-seated fears, and in that moment, my professional detachment shattered. He went to case study. He wasn't a puzzle to be solved. Who was my son? And he was in pain. I moved Veto, the sofa beside him, and without thinking, without analyzing, I reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm, his fingers long and artistic. It was a simple maternal gesture, but then my thumb began to stroke the back of his hand, a slow It was the kind of touch I might have given his father years ago. He looked down at our joined hands and then back up at my face. His expression was unreadable. "You've never done that for," he said, his voice a low murmur. "Done what I asked." My own voice, sounding distant to my ears. This Hesed just touched me without a reason. Not a hug goodbye, not a pat on the back, just a touch. I should have let go. I should have made a joke, lightened the mood, retreated to the safety of my mind, but I was mesmerized by the feeling of his skin against mine, by the profound unspoken communication passing between us. I moved my other hand to his face, my fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. My touch lingered on my thumb stroking the soft skin here. His eyes fluttered shut, and he leaned into my hand, a soft sigh escaping his lips. The air in the room grew thick-heavy with a new kind of silence. The space between us, the sacred boundary between mother and son, began to dissolve the lines, becoming as blurry and indistinct as the city lights seen through a rain-streaked window. He opened his eyes and looked at me. There was no confusion in his gaze now, no boyish vulnerability. There was a deep unnerving understanding. He saw what was happening and he wasn't pulling away. "See," he whispered, his voice husky. "That's what I'm talking about. A real feeling, not a thought, not an analysis." He lifted his own hand and placed it over mine, pressing my palm more firmly against his cheek. His skin was warm, alive. My heart began to pound a slow, heavy rhythm in my chest. I was a doctor, an expert in the human psyche, and I could not for the life of me diagnose what was happening inside me. I only knew that it felt like a thought, a terrifying, exhilarating melting off, a long internal winter. He started Tolian in his eyes, searching mine, his lips slightly parted. The movement was infinitesimal, but it was enough to shatter the spell. The full catastrophicality of the situation crashed down on OM. The alarm bells of my training, my professionalism, my motherhood, all began to shriek at once. I snatched my hands back as if I'd been burned, scrambling to my feet. "It's late," I said, my voice sharp, brittle, usheled. "Get to bed." I fled the room without looking back, my heart hammering against my ribs. I ran to the safety of me sterile white bedroom, but there was no safety to be found. The ghost of his stouch lingered on my skin, a phantom warmth that I could not extinguish. I had spent a lifetime building walls to keep the chaos out. And in a single moment of weakness, I had invited it into the very heart of my fortress. And the chaos had the face of my son. The next day was an agony of avoidance. I locked myself in my study, pretending to be on important calls. I could feel his presence in the house, a quiet, watchful energy that seemed to permeate very walls. He knew, we both knew, we had stood on the edge of a precipice, and we had both looked down. That evening, I did what I had to do. I did what I should have done weeks ago. I found him sketching by the pool, the setting sun casting long shadows across the water. "I've been thinking," I began, my voice, cool. Controlled the voice of Dr. Thorne. "The environment here isn't conducive to your well-being. The lack of structure, the isolation, it's not healthy for you. I think it would be best if you found a summer program or perhaps return to the city. Your father would be happy to have you." He looked up from his sketch pad. His eyes dark, with a hurt so profound it was like a physical blow. He wasn't fooled by my clinical jargon. He knew this wasn't about his well-being. It was about my terror. "So that's it, Hesed," his voice devoid of the warmth I had held just the night before. "You're checking me out. I'm encouraging you to engage with your peer group and resume a more structured routine." I corrected my words, sounding hollow and, even to my own ears. "Right," he said, a bitter smile touching his lips. He stood up, gathering his things. "The session is over. The doctor has spoken." He looked at me one last time, his gaze filled with a quiet, devastating finality. "I finally get through. I finally find a real piece of you, and you run away. You're right. I am my father's son, and you are still the same woman who left them." He walked away, leaving me alone by the pool. As the last of the light faded from the sky, the city below to glitter like a handful, off-scattered, indifferent diamonds. His words were the final blow, the one that brought the entire structure of my self-concept crashing down into ruin. Hello, the next morning while I was still in bed. There was no goodbye, just an empty room and a silence in the house that was heavier, more profound than I had ever known. I stood in the doorway of his room, looking at the bare mattress, the empty desk. The fortress was secure again, the chaos had been expelled, but it had never felt less like a sanctuary. It felt like a tomb. This is a story about the hubris of control, about the fallacy that a life can be managed, like a clinical trial. It's about the walls built to protect ourselves from emotion, only to discover that we have built a prison. When you starve the heart of real connection, it will eventualize it out, often in the most forbidden and destructive ways. For more stories that explore the intricate architecture of human mind, please subscribe to the channel. We can build our lives on the foundations of logic and reason, creating an elegant, orderly fortress against the messy unpredictability of the human heart. But we forget that we're still human. We forget that heart is not a subject to be studied, but a force to be reckoned with. And sometimes the very person we created, the one who knows the secret blueprints of our soul, is the only one who holds key to breaking us free and to our ultimate demolition.